Hey everybody, it's GoblinX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing another Premier Draft of the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Without further ado, let's get into our Pack 1 Pick 1, which is actually an insanely difficult pick. We have several of the best uncommons in the format, and a great rare. We've got Magmatic Galleon, which is going to be a removal spell that also gives us a treasure token, and this big vehicle to crew later. We've got Clay-Fired Bricks, which is a nice 2-for-1, drawing us a land in the early game and helping us flip into this big kind of finisher that buffs our whole board. There's the Zoetic Glyph, which is insane in this set, kind of like a 3-mana 5/4 haste that discovers when it dies. It's really good when you can put it on a map token or a treasure token or something like that. And there's a Bitter Triumph for really great removal. So I think the main two cards in competition are just the Zoetic Glyph and the Galleon, because these are both completely insane, whereas Bitter Triumph and Clay-Fired Bricks are both just very good. I think I'm going to lean towards the rare here, but I don't think it would be wrong to just take Zoetic Glyph. That card has played incredibly in this format. For Pack 1 Pick 2 now, don't have any incredible follow-ups to a Magmatic Galleon, but a Plundering Pirate should be fine. It's one of my favorite red commons in this set, just because it synergizes really well with a lot of the mechanics. It's going to give you 2 permanents off of the 1 spell, which means that it's going to work great for the cards that want you to tap multiple permanents you control. It's also going to work great with Craft, being able to exile this treasure token off your board, and it can mana fix you with the treasure. It just works super well with a lot of the set's themes, so I like Plundering Pirate a lot. Idol of the Deep King is fine, but you can usually get them later, and there is better removal in red. If you can get that first, that would be better for your deck. And there's really not too much in this pack to want to push into a different color than just taking a red card. I think all the off-color stuff is pretty equivalently powerful. Cavern Stomper is a solid green finisher. The Scout is a solid early game green value play, but I think Pirate can go toe-to-toe with those in value generally. Pick number 3 now. Not a whole lot here. The Ceratops is pretty hard to block, so it's a decent finisher, but it doesn't have any good abilities. It's just a beat stick. It's not doing anything other than that. So it's not a great value play or anything for the mana cost. Just kind of filler top end that definitely does its job. Kind of interested in Cogwork Wrestler. Doesn't look like a ton, but all of these abilities on a 1-mana card that happens to have some really great card types, like specifically being an artifact, just stacks up into being really good for the mana cost. It's a combat trick that can sometimes just eat your opponent's cheap creatures that's leaving behind the artifact to chump block with later, and then you can craft it out of your graveyard, and blue-red artifacts is a very powerful strategy in this format. I think I'll go for the Cogwork Wrestler here. Pack 1 pick number 4. Got the Waylaying Pirates, which is pretty solid in blue-red. Relatively easy to make sure you've got some artifacts on board so you can get that stun ability, and if you get the stun ability, the card's pretty good. And all 3 of the cards we've drafted so far are either an artifact or they create an artifact token, so everything we've taken works well with this. And there are 1 or 2 cards that care specifically about pirates as well in the blue-red color pair. So that is a relevant creature type. Yeah, nothing else insane in the pack. I mean, Waylaying Pirates isn't insane either, but it is a solid card to go into the blue-red archetype. For pick 5, we've got another Plundering Pirate versus another Cogwork Wrestler. There's also a Rumbling Rock Slide, but this is pretty inefficient removal. It's a ton of mana, and it's sorcery speed. There are much better removal spells in red. I even prefer the Idol of the False God or whatever it is that does the 2 damage when it hits the board to this. And that is also, I would say, kind of mediocre removal for red. Abrade is really just where it's at. So Plundering Pirate versus Cogwork Wrestler is really all I'm interested in. I think I'm going to go for another Plundering Pirate. I mean, Cogwork Wrestler is certainly better in a vacuum, but I think it tends to go pretty late. And I kind of feel a little bit more tied to red than blue, just because of the quality of Magmatic Galleon compared to the rest of these cards. So if we get pushed off of blue and going into another red deck, we'll have 3 cards towards that deck now. Pick number 6, looks like we're not going to get pushed off of blue because there's a Puzzle Door and a Brackish Blunder. Both are solid cards for blue artifact-based decks. The Puzzle Door is card draw that leaves behind an artifact in your grave to craft with. The Blunder is decent, cheap interaction that can leave behind a map token to use for your artifact shenanigans. I'll go for the Blunder here. Pick number 7, Dynatomaton is perfectly reasonable. Again, pretty much any creature that's also an artifact creature specifically plays perfectly fine, and this one has a solid enter the battlefield effect, while being another good evasive threat. Kind of like a better version of that uncommon dino that's the 5 mana 5/4 that's really hard to block. This is a 4 mana 4/3 that's still kind of hard to block and also gives you some value when it enters the battlefield, gives you some additional effect. Plus the artifact card type being pretty relevant as well. Pick 8. Nothing I'm excited about. Song of Stupefaction is just real bad. It's only for like the blue-black kind of Descend decks, or the blue-green Descend decks, and even there it's not a high pick. So we'll just take the best card out of the pack, but it's really unlikely to make the cut. We're probably not pushing into blue-black at this point. I think we're relatively well solidified into blue-red. Unlucky Drop is a pretty decent piece of interaction if you don't get enough. One thing that's really important to keep in mind is this can target an artifact or a creature, which is definitely relevant sometimes, and I have forgotten that in the past to some pretty bad results. Our opponent had like a bomb non-creature artifact, and I just didn't even realize I had a way to interact with it, which was pretty disappointing. When I looked back on it, I was like, oh shoot, I could have bounced the artifact or a creature with that spell. A bunch of very filler stuff towards the end of the draft, as you're generally going to see. So we'll fill out the deck with some filler. We are definitely not playing 3 unlucky drops, so I'll take a Compass Gnome here, but that is another card I would really prefer to cut. I think the first copy of Unlucky Drop is pretty good, but the more you get, like the weaker they get. I really don't want to play more than 2, I'd say. Brian Fang is okay, but it's very mediocre filler for the blue-red archetype in particular, because it generally cares quite a lot about specifically artifacts, and just one big flesh creature at the top end doesn't do a lot. So pack 2, pick 1, we've opened up a couple incredible white spells with Petrify and Oltec Cloud Guard, but I haven't seen a boatload of white getting passed. So I don't think we just pivot here just because we opened good white stuff. We've got an Oaken Siren here, which is pretty great for any blue-based artifact deck, which is kind of where we're headed here. So I'll probably just take the Oaken Siren. Also a solid black rare. Black, I think, was probably at least decently open, because it just usually is. But I don't remember seeing anything like super insane in the color. Just take an Oaken Siren here. Pack 2, pick 2. Love me an Inverted Iceberg as a finisher in any blue-based artifact deck. It's basically a 6 mana 6/6 that comes with a 2 mana draw spell attached for early in the game. So this is a much better card to have at the top end of our curve than the Marauding Brine Fang in this deck. Pack 2, pick 3. Careening Minecart has some really good synergies in the format if we get some of the cards that trigger every time an artifact enters the battlefield under our control. If we don't, it's just fine filler, where the Cogwork Wrestler might be better. I think Minecart's definitely better than the Conservator in blue-red, so it's really between the Wrestler and the Minecart here. The sad part is that the Minecart works really well with the Wrestlers, so we'd kind of want both. Gives the Wrestlers something good to do with their little 1 power, now they're crewing a 3/3. I think I'll take the Minecart. Being a colorless spell means I think it's just much less likely to wheel, although I don't think the Wrestler's coming back either. But there's the tiniest chance in the world. Pack 2, pick 4, there's a Goblin Tomb Raider for a super aggressive red card, and awkwardly it looks like white is decently open from this direction. We see a Spring-Loaded Saw Blades, a Ruin Lurker Bat, and an Oltec Cloud Guard here. We've got Inverted Iceberg, Waylaying Pirates, Oaken Siren, and Cogwork Wrestler. We have 4 pretty premium blue commons. We have a great red rare, couple premium red commons, and now we take a Tomb Raider. Yeah, we're pretty deep into these colors. I don't think it's pivot time onto white, sadly. We are kind of stuck here in blue-red artifacts, and we'll take the Goblin Tomb Raider for that deck. Pack 2, pick 5. Saheeli's Lattice is perfectly fine. It's a little card draw spell that is going to leave an artifact on your board for any artifact synergies. And we definitely want to have a couple dinosaurs in our deck. That way this can become a really good spell. If you can craft this later in the game, then it is excellent. Turning into like a finisher creature that has the early game card draw spell attached, similar to an inverted iceberg. So this card's really, really good in red-green dinos. But I think it could still be solid in blue-red, where we have access to cards like Dynatomaton, and that probably means that the Marauding Brinefang makes the cut, now that we have this to craft with a dinosaur in our grave. So island cycling to make sure we have it in grave, and then crafting it with the Lattice seems pretty legitimate to me. Waylaying Pirates is the only option really there. Pick 6. Pick 7, I think all of these cards are pretty bad except for Cavern Stomper and maybe like Acrobatic Leap's an okay trick, so kind of a complete miss there for basically anything we'd be drafting. Shipwreck Sentry's pretty filler because it's pretty inconsistent in terms of when it can be attacking, but it still does things for the mana cost. Definitely better than the other blue or red options, so we'll put it into the deck. Now we'll take a Sunshot Militia. We have a decent amount of cards that are getting a wide board state to tap multiple cards towards something like that effect. It's a pretty good top deck in the late game. If you're in a board stall and both of you just have a bunch of creatures on board and nobody can get in, top deck a Sunshot Militia. Sometimes this just finishes your opponent off for the last few points of damage. And even if it doesn't, if you've got a few non-creature artifacts sitting around, then you get to keep pinging your opponent every single turn while still holding up all your blocks, which can be really good. Pick 10. Just take the on-color cards. You know what? I'll just rare draft the uncommon to fill our vault progress a little bit faster on this one. Because I am definitely not playing a Child of the Volcano. Alright, I don't love our deck currently. We've got some pretty bad filler like Compass Gnome, Shipwreck Sentry. I think it's definitely better than Compass Gnome for this deck, but it's not ideal. Blade Master as well. Not ideal, but I wouldn't despise having it in my deck. I guess, really, Compass Gnome? Actually, looking at the deck, like, I don't think there's any cards that are just terrible for this exact archetype. Okay, this is going a little bit better than I thought. Looking at this, we've been missing on a lot of picks this pack and just getting some mediocre filler, but it's stuff that works okay in our archetype, and we've got an entire third pack to find more good playables, so we really only need 3 playables out of the next pack, and if we can get more than 3, then we get to start cutting cards like Shipwreck Sentry and Brazen Blade Master and really improving the deck there. So we are not actually in a bad spot at all. And if you ever want to rare draft for your collection, make sure to hold down the Alt key or the Options key. And Arena will tell you how many of every card you own. And if it's the check mark, that means you've got 4 out of 4. You got your full play set. As you can see here, 2 out of 4 on that, 2 out of 4 on that. Anyways, pack 3, pick 1 now is kind of a miss. At least we did get 1 premium common, which is the Volatile Wanderglyph, just a way better card than our Compass Gnome right now. It's got that really important, really relevant artifact creature type, and it has a great ability whenever it becomes tapped, so as we're attacking in the early game, and as we're tapping it to cards like Sunshot Militia, so a little sad that just a common is the best on-color card for our pick 1 here, but it is what it is. We can't control what we open, and it's still a decent addition to this deck that's definitely better than a lot of the other commons we have right now. Pack 3, pick number 2. So Brass's Tunnel Grinder is a little bit narrow. It's definitely going to require some work to get it to flip, but if you can get it to flip, it's basically always going to win you the game. And it's not really competing with anything that's like less narrow than it. The other on-color cards are all kind of weak. Puzzle Door would probably be the best one for this deck, but I think Tunnel Grinder is probably a bit better than Puzzle Door at the very least, even if it is a little inconsistent to flip it. So in Magical Christmas Land, the idea with this card is that the turn that we play it, we discard a permanent and draw a couple cards. And then since we discarded a permanence, we've descended this turn and we get to put a counter onto it. Then we're hoping to have cards like the Volatile Wanderglyph, so that we can attack in and discard more permanents to draw more cards. And then we can get this to have descended a couple more times by just repeatedly discarding permanents or sacrificing permanents, trading creatures off, stuff like that. If this manages to flip, then every spell you cast for the rest of the game is going to cast an additional spell out of your deck with the Discover, which is where you just really win. Now we've got the Belligerent here, which is a little slow in terms of its stat line, a 5/5 that crews for 3, but if it can get an attack or 2 off, it can draw you a lot of cards, because you can just cast things off the top of your deck for the rest of the turn, which can be super explosive, so we'll take the Belligerent there. Pack 3, pick 4, we've got Atali's Favor, which is a solid value play because of that Discover ability. Pretty big fan of this. We've also got a Dowsing Device, which can be okay, but it is tremendously narrow. All it's doing is helping get a bit of damage in. So it's similarly narrow to like an equipment or an aura or something where it's entirely just going to buff the cards that you already have on board rather than really counting as a full card's worth of value by itself. So I think I'd rather just take Atali's Favor, which is going to buff your board for some extra damage and guarantee that you get a 1-for-1. You also cast another spell off of it when you play it. Another Goblin Tomb Raider looks excellent here. Immediately slam that into this deck. Panicked Altasaur is a perfectly reasonable card to have at the top end of our curve. It gives us a 3rd dinosaur for our Healy's Lattice. Pack 3, pick 7, that is a late Staunch Crewmate, and that is a lucky, lucky find here. Our deck is loaded with pirates and artifacts to where this should basically never miss, so a 2-mana 2/1 that always lets us draw one of the best cards in the top 4 cards of our library every time we cast it. That is an excellent 2-for-1 play, and we're incredibly happy to see that. Also incredibly happy to get another Inverted Iceberg at the top end. That seems great as well. Iceberg is just going to be more consistent than kind of the Lattice pile of stuff, so maybe we're getting enough good stuff we can just drop the Dino package, the Lattice package, and just use like the Iceberg for value plays that flip into finishers. Again, I'm not going to play triple unlucky drop. Not going to play another Blade Master, though. We'll take an Ancestor's Aid. We are looking a little bit low on non-creature spells. Now we get that Puzzle Door to come back around, which is actually pretty great. That gives us another card that works with the Tunnel Grinder and more non-creature spells if we need them. Got 2 Puzzle Doors here in the end, which is pretty cool. Got another Shipwreck Sentry if we need to just load up on 2 drops, but I don't think we do. We might have to play one of those. I don't think we'll need to play both. Pirate Hat is certainly not unplayable in this kind of archetype, but it is definitely a bit overcosted. It's a lot of mana getting soaked up into this equipment. 2 mana to cast. It's only going to be 1 to equip most of the time for this deck, but still, the initial investment's kind of hefty. Pick 14. Just grabbing some stuff to fill out the collection, fill out our vault progress. Let's build this deck here. We get to make a few cuts for sure. This looks very, very reasonable. Got 3 rares in here. I wouldn't classify them all as just straight up bombs. I would say Magmatic Galleon's a straight up bomb because you don't have to put any work into this, just doing incredible, incredible work for you. But the Tunnel Grinder and the Belligerent, these are both cards that in specific positions might not actually play super well. So I wouldn't call them just like straight, just easy bombs or anything. So 10 cuts here. I think I am probably cutting the Dino and Lattice package. Just focusing full up on pirates and artifacts. Got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 creatures. Don't want to cut too many. But I could cut a Shipwreck Sentry or 2, or like a Shipwreck Sentry and a Blade Master. I think those are the only creatures that are really on the chopping block here. Let's go 3 1-drops, 5 2-drops, 3 3-drops. Cut 1 Sentry. Do this for the creature curve, then we cut 5 non-creatures. I think I prefer Puzzle Door to Pirate Hat a little bit. I mean, Pirate Hat's kind of cool with like Goblin Tomb Raiders, but so is Puzzle Door. Like we can play this turn 1, play a Tomb Raider turn 2, hit them with it, and then crack this to draw the card. 5 cuts. It's kind of a lot. More than I thought it would be. Belligerent is kind of just a better, bigger minecart, sort of. We've got 2 vehicles in this deck. Even if I cut the minecart, and our other 2 vehicles are definitely better. The big rares, the Belligerent and the Galleon. We didn't hit any like crazy synergies for the minecart. We didn't get any Captain Storms to get +1/+1 counters on our board every time we play an artifact. That's the really fun way to use the minecart. Don't have any of that going on. And we're not like splashing to where we need a million treasure tokens either. I think we still need 1 unlucky drop. Don't have a ton of interaction here. We've got 1 blunder, 1 unlucky drop, 1 galleon. Probably an okay deck to cut a land in. We have these that can pull a land out by drawing into it. Treasure here, 2 treasures here. These could potentially draw a land. Yeah, I think we can go 16 with this deck for sure. 1 final cut, maybe Ancestor's Aid, maybe 1 Puzzle Door. Let's keep it interesting. Let's just cut down to 1 Puzzle Door here, have a nice variety. Because then we have like Puzzle Door and Double Iceberg are like straight card draw. We've also got the Wanderglyph for card filtering. The Belligerent could be huge card draw later. The Tunnel Grinder's also card draw, discard some cards, draw some cards. So we still got plenty of ways to filter through our deck. Sift through some of the filler stuff and try to find the big explosive plays like Galleon. Like 6/6 icebergs in the late game. Yeah. Looks very legitimate to me, but it's been a little while since I played the set. Been doing a lot of cons lately. And card quality has gone up tremendously in recent years in draft, so this looks insane when you look at the average Cons of Tarkir deck. Probably crush a lot of those. But maybe not the craziest deck ever for this format, at least. I've definitely had way more explosive, but it still looks pretty nice to me. And we're pretty close to even on red and blue cards here, so we'll just go for the even split at 8-8. And let's call it a deck here. All right, here's a look at the final deck list for today. We're on a blue-red Pirates and Artifacts build. We've got a nice aggressive curve with 3 1-drop creatures, 5 2-drops, a few 3s, and so on, all the way up the curve. We've got the hasting little Tomb Raiders to bash in for a ton of damage early, alongside plenty of 2-mana 2/2 style creatures. We've got some Plundering Pirates for some treasure tokens that can help us just ramp into a big old iceberg at the top end of the curve early, or get to some of our really nice bomb rares. We've got Magmatic Galleon and the Belligerent. So we have 2 different rare vehicles here, 2 different pirate ships at the top, the Belligerent being a massive card draw engine, and the Galleon being huge removal. It's also always a 2-for-1, being a removal spell that leaves behind the beefy vehicle that is the 5/5 Galleon itself. We've got a Brass's Tunnel Grinder as well, with a lot of good random synergies to help hit the Descend triggers on this. So the turn we play it, it discards a card, so if we discard a permanent, that's 1 Descend counter on it. Then with cards like the Volatile Wanderglyph, we could discard a permanent to draw a card, and then we'll also have Descended, or an Inverted Iceberg might mill a permanent, and then we'll have Descended, or we could sacrifice a Puzzle Door, and we'll have Descended, and of course, in a pretty aggressive deck with a lot of creatures, we can also just trade something off to have Descended. So if we can flip this into the Searing Rift and just start doubling up our spells for the rest of the game, that'll be another pretty big win condition. So a lot of pretty spicy stuff in the non-creature slot down here with these big pirate ships and the Tunnel Grinder. So hopefully we can play some of those spells, but otherwise, again, nice consistent curve, a little bit of interaction with some bounce spells, and a tiny bit of removal with like Galleon. Looks like a pretty decent deck today, and excited to see how it does. So without further ado, let's head into the gameplay. All right, here we are on the play for game one. Kind of a slow hand here. We are going to be doing things with our mana throughout this game if we want to, but it's going to be a 1 mana 1/2 and then no creature turn 2. Then we got to throw the favor on it turn 3. And I think with this kind of hand, we should just dump out the Wrestler so that we have something to put the favor on, and I can tap out to play the Iceberg this turn without like not putting a creature on the board this turn. Because otherwise, if I didn't play Wrestler turn 1 and I went for Iceberg turn 2, I'd have nothing to put the favor on turn 3. White and 1. Most of the instant speed removal in white is destroy a tapped creature, destroy an attacking creature, so I think we can favor here without getting 2 for 1. Uh-oh. Oh, they've got Promising Vein, that's what it's waiting for. They could sack that. Alright, there we go. And now there's our 3-drop on curve. We discover a Plundering Pirate, and that is a great hit off of the Atali's favor. Card has given us some excellent value, and now with the treasure token from the Plundering Pirate, we can cast a Magmatic Galleon next turn if our opponent tries to play a blocker. Game's looking pretty excellent right now. We could also like Ancestor's Aid plus Tunnel Grinder instead. We've got some really good options if our opponent drops something to try to block with. Idol of the Deep King. Alright, well, can't do anything about that. If they don't play anything to block with, then our options are considerably lesser. Now we just use a Tunnel Grinder, I imagine. Got the treasure to play this if I play 1 land this turn. If I discard 2 cards, I draw 3. I think I discard both the lands, because I only need to draw 1 land in the top 3 for this to be better than just discarding a land. Okay, beautiful. Now we get a counter onto the Tunnel Grinder. We need to get 2 more of those, I think, to flip it. Yep. Got another creature to slam out if they don't play a blocker now. Although we'll probably just cast the Inverted Iceberg. Craft that. I don't have an artifact in the grave, so we don't actually have something to craft with unless we exile our Wrestler, because we can't exile the treasure token and sack the treasure token to the Iceberg. Opponent plays nothing, so that looks like we hit them with Wrestler and play a Blade Master then. If they kill the Wrestler when it declares an attack, I guess we flip the Iceberg, because then we have an artifact in grave. Okay, if we don't, we hit them for 2, and we drop a Blade Master, which is actually a 4/4 on attacks, which is kind of big. Mischievous Pup. Just a 3/1 flash. They're going to pick up the Idol of the Deep King, but it doesn't actually do anything. I guess it can shoot our face. So they can stack that up alongside one of their creatures damaging one of ours for a combat trick. Oh, that is a surprising attack. I'm just going to take it. I don't need to blow the Ancestor's Aid here. Dread Maw's Ire. Well, that explains that. That's not bad for me. I mean, they can blow up the Wrestler or the Iceberg would be their best targets. Yeah, that's not terrible. Just a 1/1 removal spell. Basically, imagine they just cast Shatter on our 6/6 after we flipped it later. Except this way we didn't have to dump a million mana into it to get them to do that. So 1/1 removal spell is great. Not great, but it's super fine for us. Galleon the Yearling away. We definitely don't lethal them here, but we hit pretty hard. I think it's certainly worth it. Don't know if I play an Oaken Siren. I imagine I do. Because if they want to kill this Oaken Siren with their Idol, that's 3 of their potentially 5 mana. That's going to soak up more than half of their mana. So even though they have the removal guaranteed to kill the Siren, they don't really have enough mana to spare to do it without falling behind to our other creatures. Yeah, and they're still stuck on 4 mana, so it's even worse for them. And we hit the Sunshot Militia, which means we almost definitely just lethal them now. Let's see. I guess if they go chump chump, then they won't be lethal. If they do this, then they certainly will be. They have 2 mana up, which is not enough for Idle. So I think I target the Siren here to play around the destroy a tapped creature thing. Although I guess if they had the deal 4 damage to an attacker or blocker, they could have done that in response to my combat trick, but that would also play around that pretty well, because then they're stopping 3 damage instead of 4 damage, so we still hit for more than we would have if we targeted the Blade Master. I think that was the right place to use the combat trick. Regardless, pretty excellent game for us. They're stuck on mana a little bit there, and we had a great aggressive curve with one of our biggest bombs, the Magmatic Galleon, to help top things off. So we find a nice, easy victory in game number 1. See if we can keep it up heading into game 2. Here we are on the play for game number 2. This could be awkward without the blue source, but we've got 1 treasure producer with the Plundering Pirate as long as we hit any land in our deck. And that's going to allow us to at least cast the Belligerent, which will then try to dig out some lands with that card draw. So I think this should work pretty well. We've also got the Wanderglyph. If we don't manage to hit a land in the first couple draw steps, then we can use the Wanderglyph to discard like the Sentry, trying to draw into a land. That's probably how we're curving here. Pirate into Belligerent into Iceberg, discard Sentry to Wanderglyph. Blue-red mirror match here. Our opponent starts with some really efficient flyers, a Spyglass Siren and an Oaken Siren. And that is a miserably bad draw. Brackish Blunder, another blue spell. So they could double block and kill one of these at the cost of just one of their creature. Kind of have to attack with both here because we need to dig for that land. Unfortunately, that means Wanderglyph is probably not long for this world. Oh no. This is getting really bad. So 0 lands drawn in our first 3 draws. See if we can get there on draw number 4. Another Spyglass Siren. That is insane. Spyglass Siren's one of the best uncommons in the format. They've got the double up here on us. Just a tremendously good value play. It's so many synergies with that artifact that hits the board. Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? I think this was a really reasonable 2-lander to keep, because any land in the whole deck just activates the whole hand with the Plundering Pirate. But opponent has the aggro follow-up to us getting stuck like 3 or 4 turns in a row. And that looks like game over. Dowsing Device, pretty narrow, but really good here where they're firmly in the aggressive position. Now start using those maps to try to buff the Sirens. They've got the Waterwind Scout as well. Yeah, it looks like Blue-Red was just infinitely open in their pod. We didn't see any Scouts or Sirens. So now we can blunder the Spyglass Siren. Whatever we blunder, they're going to be able to recast it and get another map token, because the Scout gives them one as well, so we might as well blunder the card with a counter to remove that. And then we've just, like, barely survive. I don't even know if we cast the Blade Master here, honestly, because it doesn't help block any of this. It could block like them playing an artifact creature on the ground because it would give itself haste. Yeah, we probably need to play around them casting another creature because any creature they play, if it comes with a map token or something, is going to have haste. And we can't play around them playing another flyer. If they play another flyer, we're dead. So at least this way we play around them casting a creature on the ground. Like they've got the needle to stun here, so if they have needle plus a 3-mana or less creature, they can get us, but this plays around like, I don't know, Dynatomaton or something? No, because Dynatomaton has Menace. Yeah. I guess we're just kind of screwed no matter what at this point. Probably could have been anyone's game if we hit this mountain and island turn 3, turn 4, but we're just so far behind now. And now they're forcing us to bounce the Spyglass Siren, so we don't even get rid of a +1/+1 counter off their board. If they win this coin flip, they win the game. They don't, they just get a land, but that still means they've drawn so many cards off all these explorers. Alright, all I can do is target the 1/1 to not die. So we don't get to get rid of any +1/+1 counters, and now we're super dead. Alright, 1-1, heading into game 3. Just some unfortunate mana issues. It's gonna happen again, but I'm gonna keep. We're just not gonna hit land 3. It has the same potential flaw. We've got a card draw spell again, just like last time where we had the discard and draw. Where are you finding these draft pods, opponents? I guess they could have just like taken this pick 1, pack 1, pick 1, or pack 2, pick 1, or pack 3, pick 1. Doesn't necessarily mean they're just getting past Spyglass Sirens left and right, but still such a rough way to start things off, seeing the Siren turn 1. I really knew it, didn't I? I really did. This hand is just even more objectively a keep. I don't think you can ever mulligan this. We have both our colors, a card draw spell to dig for the land, and a pirate. And then when we hit 3 mana after the Plundering Pirate, if I don't need to commit more to the board by playing like Blade Master and stuff alongside it, we can Tunnel Grinder to discard a bunch of cards and dig for more lands. Like last time, you could have definitely made an argument for mulliganing. I think it was still correct to keep, but you could have argued that since it was a monocolored hand there was a little bit extra risk to the 2-lander. But this one is just like straight up never a mulligan. Alright, slow them down, force them to spend the turn recasting Kellen, and we can't sack a map token without a creature. So pass the turn from here. Iron Paw Aspirant. Buff Kellen, that's interesting. I would have thought Oaken Siren and then Aspirant for the counter on the Siren. Would have been the line there. God, you just fall behind so miserably fast in this format. It's like we hit the land and it's like the game's just already over now. Yeah. +1/+1 counter on the Kellen actually does work really well here, because we can only play a 3-power creature on blocks. That was actually like the 5-head move from our opponent. Oh. I guess playing a Plundering Pirate sets up mana to maybe get to Galleon next turn. We top deck another land, and if it doesn't, we can at least Waylaying Pirates and stun one of these flyers. The Pirate's only going to block the 1/2 on the ground, but that still blocks something instead of just tapping out for Tunnel Grinder. Just taking everything. It's got to be Plundering Pirate, right? I don't think I crashed the... or crack the map. The treasure, not the map. I guess both, technically. I mean, maybe I do, because if it's a non-creature on top, this makes it 4 power to try to trade with Kellen. If it's a land on top, though, then we would have preferred to just draw that land so I can actually play Galleon next turn. Just coin flip lottery move here. I'm gonna pass. I'm not gonna go for the coin flip. The coin flip is like non-land on top, it was great to crack the map. Land on top, it was horrible to crack the map. Down to 7. I think we're super dead. Yeah, they're still just curving out with every single point of mana. It was a non-land on top. Oof. Okay, this stun the 4/4. Take 3 in the sky. And then I don't have a treasure towards Galleon anymore to recover. Alternatively, I just play another Plundering Pirate. Then I like double block here? Take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope, I'm dead if I do that. So they attack all, I go chump chump, and then we just lose even if I get to Galleon. I don't think there's any line that's remotely close to stable. Closest is probably this, but it feels really rough because we cash in all the treasure. And it's still very far from stable. That would be a really weird attack. Okay, I was gonna say it would be super weird if they attacked with Kellen and not the 4/4. Because I can double block and kill Kellen without losing a Plundering Pirate, but the 4/4 I would have to double block and lose both creatures. Alright. Oh boy. It's like all we've really got here. Game 4. Here we are for game number 4, crossing our fingers and hoping for the best here. Once again, a pretty awkward hand that I don't think I can afford to mulligan. Kind of the opposite issue from our first 2 hands that we kept into losing. All right, here we are in game 4 with another really awkward hand. This is kind of for the opposite reason of the other awkward ones. Again, I don't think any of these 3 hands were really mulliganable, but they all have pretty concerning issues. This one is that we don't get to play a creature till turn 3 to block with. I'm gonna go back to cons immediately after this draft. This is insane. Spyglass Siren turn 1 into Oaken Siren turn 2 on our slow hand that doesn't start till 3. Not a good start for us. But yeah, the issue with this hand is the lack of early game plays. It's got pretty great late game, but a 4-land opener with no actual creatures till turn 3 is not ideal. Okay, awesome. So this time they didn't get to go Siren, Spyglass Siren into Oaken Siren into 3-drop, into 4-drop, into 5-drop. They skipped a turn. Thank all that is holy. So now play a Plundering Pirate. I don't get to do any blocking here. If I play an Oaken Siren, it doesn't really matter. I block 1 damage. I don't kill anything. Yeah, we still just play a Plundering Pirate. Because Oaken Siren isn't actually stopping any damage. Well, I mean, it's stopping 1 damage, but not a significant amount of damage. It's not like trading into one of the flyers or anything. Alright, so here comes a Compass Gnome. not going to crack a treasure for the wrestler right now. Waylaying Pirates is a legitimately decent draw. Can play a belligerent and hold up a wrestler. 13 here. I think I can afford to take another 3, go to 10. They can't attack in on the ground at all. Now that we have the belligerent, which is going to give us a treasure token every time it attacks, it might be reasonable to cash in the wrestler just to stop a couple points of damage. I think I am going to do that. Now they have 6 power in the sky because they've got the Cloud Guard, which is another super premium common. Alright, so now we're just going to keep stunning things with Waylaying Pirates. Any trades? I was going to say, yeah, any trades here are just good for us. I guess for value, we should probably cast Dynatomaton Oaken Siren here. Don't get to stun anything this turn anymore, but get more spells cast. Try to overwhelm our opponent by just dumping our deck onto the board. Now we have an unlucky drop coming up, which can bounce that Oltec Cloud Guard. So now they sack Compass Gnome and hit us for 8 in the sky? Yikes. So put 1 counter on the Oaken Siren, so I can't... Never mind. Let's say put a counter on Oaken Siren, so I can't just block a damage for free every turn. Is what I would have guessed. Okay, they're just going to petrify the Oaken Siren anyway. So now we're just dead in 2 swings. But I have Waylaying Pirates or Unlucky Drop. I guess I need to cast both because they have 8 damage in the sky now. 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. It's not enough mana. I need 8 mana to do both of these. An Unlucky Drop and a Waylaying Pirates, and I have to do both to survive. Because I need to drop the Cloud Guard and also stun one of these other 2. Come on, Belligerent. Let's hit big. Doesn't do anything. Six mana here. Get a stun, get a bounce. Get a 6/6. Just doesn't do anything. We gotta dig past the Tomb Raider and see what there is. Sunshine Militia doesn't do anything either. Maybe they won't attack with everybody. Maybe they'll attack with like just Cloud Guard or something to play around Settle the Wreckage. Lord knows why, but who knows? There's a chance. Alright. Well, 1-3 it is. A rude return to the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Really just felt like there was nothing we could do. I feel like I drafted pretty decently here. We ended up with a solid deck for what our draft pod was giving us, for what we were capable of grabbing. We just hit some rough openers. They were all right on the borderline, where they were like just good enough that we kind of had to keep, and we just got punished every single time. We kept 2/2-landers and just missed land drops over and over and over. And then we keep the slightly slow hand, and our opponent does curve out on us with those really cheap flyers turn 1, turn 2, and just gets the beat down going, starting at a really low life total from those couple cards. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot we could do here. I don't think that I drafted particularly poorly or played particularly poorly. Sure, we could have ended up with a slightly better deck, probably could have made slightly better lines. The only real thing I think that could have been done gameplay-wise was taking some mulligans, but those are obviously just massive in hindsight decisions. And I think looking at those opening 7 hands each time, I think they were all reasonable keeps. Arguably even just all the correct keep, we just got punished on all 3 of them. Yeah, I don't know. Could have drafted a tiny bit better, but that's about it. I don't think anything went super wrong in terms of doing incorrect stuff today. We just get absolutely hosed, go 1-3 with this one. This looks much better than that. Looks like a pretty average deck. I guess the lack of interaction was certainly an issue, but we just didn't have opportunities to find it, right? Like, we took the blunder, we took the unlucky drops, we've got multiple copies of that. We needed more cheap interaction, and there just wasn't any in our draft pod. Right, like, I don't think stacking in more copies of our unlucky drops into this deck makes it any better. We still get crushed by all those cheap flyers. We just needed, like, a braids. There was that one idol that we could have used, the 3-mana thing to shoot something for 2, which is a little cheaper than unlucky drops, so it would have helped for sure as quote-unquote cheap interaction, but I don't think we saw a single abrade or any of the sunfire torches for that 1-mana equipment that you can shoot something for 2. It's like the biggest flaw of the deck, but I don't think it was a self-imposed flaw at all. I don't think we like drafted incorrectly into not getting the interaction. I think it just didn't really exist for us in the pod. There's other hindsight things that's like, obviously in hindsight, if you know exactly what you're going to draw with all of those hands and exactly what your opponent's going to play, you mulligan all 3 of those games. But another hindsight thing would have been ending up in blue-white instead of blue-red. But I don't remember seeing a bunch of premium white stuff in pack 1. It all kind of started showing up pack 2, pack 3 is where it got pretty good. Maybe we could have went for like a super late pivot. I don't know. Just a rough draft all around, and I don't think there's much that we did particularly wrong about it. Just get kind of crushed here. Bunch of slight edges that could be gained to try to improve it a bit, but just not a great day of Magic. Gonna be 1-3, just grab 100 gems out of the 1500 gem event, and 1 booster pack of the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. But that is gonna end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in seeing more like it, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.